look at the big air. Oh, that's Josh running wide. Look how close they are. And away they go. The two Subarus get away fairly evenly. Kieran tries to go in wide. Oh, Tom's hit Kieran. But Josh goes back on the inside. Gary goes wide. Mike goes up the inside of Gary. Oh, there's a bit of a tap there. Oh, there's Craig has pushed Sam into the wall. Josh Hardy wins his second ever win and the second win of the day. Chris doing more rallycross in the BMW than actual touring car racing. And it's the first win for Mark Nicol in the Renault Megane. Joe's definitely going to get it. A fantastic win for Heafy on his debut event. His first ever win in the Nissan GTR. Unless Kieran can make a last minute dive. And he does. And Mark Nicol is 6th, which means he's the independent champion for season 2. Craig Kellett in the Nissan GTR is going to be a win for Craig. Craig Kellett is going to take the win in this race. Craig Kellett is your season 2 FWTC champion. Hello and welcome to the FWTC Online Touring Car Championship. My name is Tom and you join us here at Brands Hatch Indy Circuit for round 6 and the final of season 3 after it was cut short. The guys will be going round the Indy Circuit for the first time, and it is only a 1.1 mile circuit, so 27 laps will be the count for this race. In the entry list then, the teams have all appeared as Tom Foster returns after his 2-race hiatus. So all 5 teams have turned up. In the independents, Josh Hardy is of course here with Connor Hewlett. Gary Black returns after missing out at Le Mans. Of course, we've got Joe McCall in the BMW, Alan Stretton in the Subaru, and we have got Chris Hensby, who finally turns up to the final after initially putting himself in for season 3 in his Subaru. So let's have a little look at the points going into the final to see who's in for a fight for titles, as all 3 titles are up for grabs coming into the final here. Craig Kellett is 177 points joint first and second with Darren Parker, so it's all guns blazing for both of those. Josh Hardy is a dark outsider, 148 points with Joe Burrows, also could be an outsider with Mark on 140, Rob 138, Mike 137, and it continues down quite close mid-pack, so anything can happen. Realistically, Darren and Craig are up for it, but if anything happens to those two and they have a nightmare in the 3 races with the double points on offer, as we said, anything can happen. In the teams then, Elite Racing are on 375, only 5 points ahead of DC, with K&N 355, HB 317, KTEC 254. Realistically, it's looking between Elite Racing, DC, possibly K&N if they get some good results, and the other 2 obviously don't get any good results here. In the independents, realistically again, it's just between Josh and Connor, as Josh is on 223, Connor 221, only 2 points between them. Gary 160, unlikely to take the title, but you never know. So of course, double points on offer will really radically change the points here, but those are the main title contenders for the final here in season 3. In regards to tyre ballast, hards, mediums and soft tyres are removed for the final, so it's an even playing field, all on super softs for all 3 races. Let's have a little look at our first grid for race 1. Okay, here's your grid then for the race 1 of the final, and it's advantage to Craig Kellett with the extra point on pole position in the Nissan GTR for Elite Racing, next to Josh Hardy in his Renault Megane. Row 2 is the Renault Megane of Gary Black, and the BMW M4 of Joe McCall. Row 3 is Darren Parker in his BMW M4 for DC Motorsports next to K&N Racing Nissan GTR of Mark Nicol. Row 4 is Chris Hensby in the Subaru WRX for the first showing next to Harry Cook in his DC Motorsports BMW M4. Row 5 is the first of the K-Tech Racing Ford Mustangs of Tom Foster and Joe Burrows in his Hyundai Genesis. Row 6 is Mike Kuipers in the K&N Racing Nissan GTR next to Alan Stratton in the Subaru WRX. Row 7 is Stephen Heath in HB Motorsports Hyundai Genesis next to Rob Pellet in the Nissan GTR for Elliott Racing. And at the back row of the grid we've got Kieran Thomas in the second of the Ford Mustangs for K-Tech Racing, and Connie Hewlett is demoted to the back of the grid after some technical issues pushing back to the back. Okay, here we go then, the first race of the final. Craig Kellett is on pole position, Darren is down in 5th, and away they go. It's a good start from Craig as always, and Josh gets a good start as well, so is immediately on the back end of him, and that's someone off already. I think that's Mark Nicol, he is, yep, but I think they all get through quite safely. On board with Mike. It's quite a tight hairpin to get all the cars around. There's some a little bit of contact further down the field, and as they all come round, it's advantage to Craig on lap 1. So Josh already looking to take the lead away from Craig. Craig looking comfortable so far, and Darren already progressing up into 3rd here as he overtakes Joe McCall, but Joe is trying to get the switch back. I'm not sure if he's got past Darren quite yet, and has to slot behind him and settle for 4th. So Stephen Heath in 5th, with Gary in 6th. Tom is 7th after returning. Connor in 9th. So at the moment, that's Connor off in the gravel, so slowing him down just ahead of Harry there, who's just ahead of Alan. Things have settled already here. So again, this is not looking great for Connor in the independence battle, but Josh looking very strong so far in 2nd. But as we all know, Josh can get a little bit too ahead of himself going for wins, and he can be known to come off. So Gary on the back end of Stephen Heath here, pushing for 5th. Mad Joe's dropped slightly into the path of Stephen. There's Tom taking some of the grass with him. Harry down in 9th, Connor in 10th. We go on board with Connor. It's a great circuit this at Brands. We have chosen to do the Indy circuit, which is a lot shorter. It'll be an interesting situation for 16 cars on the grid. Whoa, a bit of contact here. It looks like it's Tom off on the grass. So it's a little bit close in terms of contacts going on, but Tom has settled back into 7th, with Heafy dropping to 8th. Mark and Gary here fighting out for 6th and 5th. And that's a good dive in there from Mark, and he gets the overtake done. He goes up to 5th ahead of Gary. and Harry and Connor still fighting behind there for 9th and 10th. Joe has ended up on his own in 4th. Looking very quick, and now we've got a fight on for the lead. This is Josh really pushing here for Craig, and people have said that they know that Josh is very quick, but if he can keep his head down, that's his only real negative side, and his weakness is just getting too ahead of himself. On board with Darren. We're on lap 7 of 27. Of course, it's a larger lap count, but it's a very short lap time, 42 to 43 seconds, and the qualifying proved to be extremely close. All the top 10 pretty much within half a second of each other. And that's another dive from Josh, and Craig goes wide. They are literally side by side, and Craig is not running away with the lead at the moment. Josh is really hot on him, making Craig work hard for this. And of course this is important for 2 reasons, 3 reasons more than anything actually. Craig obviously is fighting with Darren, who is in 3rd for the overall title. It's early days, it's race 1, but all the results count. So if things get a bit messy between him, Josh and Darren, then of course it will have some serious implications due to double points. Josh also is looking to gain as many points as possible for the independents. He's actually leading by 2 points, so getting caught up in a fight could lose him some points if he ends up spinning out. Further down, it's Tom's just got the inside of Gary and overtakes him to take 6th, and is just behind Mark now. And as you can see, Gary is pushing Tom. Oh, Tom is sideways, drifting around the corner. That's going to allow Gary to get on the outside and overtake him, as he does. Up they come to the hairpin lap 10. Further down, Stephen is down to 8th, continues in 8th, and we're on board with Harry now, as Harry continues to try and pass Connor in 9th. Joe Burrows moves up to 11th, and Chris Hensby, who had qualified a very strong 7th in the Subaru for his debut appearance in it, after switching to the Subaru from the BMW of season 1, has dropped unfortunately down to 12th so far, just behind Alan Stratton, who struggling here. Alan was very strong around Lago Maggiore, but has just not quite got it down to a T with that Subaru here at Brands. Kieran also struggling in the Mustang in 14th, Mike struggling 15th, and Rob Pellet also is down in last position, quite a way behind, so something must have happened to Rob. Back in the lead again then. So Darren is up to 2nd, Josh is down to 3rd. So Darren has managed to get ahead of Josh, and now this really puts the pressure on Craig. The points are literally as even as they can get from this point, and Darren is trying to not let Craig get too far ahead for races 2 and 3. Otherwise he's going to have to fight harder to get those positions and back up equal and ahead of Craig. Joe's still doing well in 4th. Gary and Mark here are now fighting for 5th and 6th, as Tom dropped behind Gary again. Some great racing mid-pack. Gary stays behind, and now Tom potentially looking to get on the back of Gary. And this race here is interesting. There's Stephen Heath, Harry, Connor and Joe. Connor, oh, nearly sideways. So let's go on board with Joe to watch this four-way race. Connor still is attacking on the back of Joe. And Joe slightly goes wide. Connor goes up, gets 10th. And this is not quite going to be enough for Connor at the moment to continue his push for the independence title. Don't forget, if Josh does well, stays where he is, he'll get the points, and he'll also be up there in the grid for race 2. But Josh has dropped behind just slightly, but anything can happen. And that is Heafy going very wide on the grass. Harry was on the outside and he's back on the inside, so Harry's got the position here to overtake Stephen Heath into and over the line for lap 16. Harry gets him and is into 8th now. Oh, Harry takes a nice little shortcut there, and that race battle here continues throughout laps 16 to 17, 8th, 9th, 10th and 11th, still raging on. So Tom on the back end of Gary here, and Mark, Gary and Tom have gone up a position because it looks like Joe has dropped down. So Joe McCall has dropped down to 7th. So something's happened to Joe, unfortunately. We can have a look at the replay and find out what happened to Joe. Yeah, that's really hurt his potential podium position. So let's find out what happened to Joe as he comes over the start-finish line. He comes down into the first corner, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's just caught the gravel. Yeah, there it is, and it just spins him onto the grass and nearly into the wall. Makes light contact, but he manages to continue, but it's just pushed him down to 7th. On board with Joe then. Let's see what happens from his perspective. Yeah, it's just there. It's a real shame. So let's catch up with the leaders. Here's Josh on board with him. Darren is ahead, and Craig is gapping Darren a little bit now. Darren's struggling to keep on the back of Craig, and Josh has still dropped back and hasn't caught up since. It was really on fire and really put the pressure on Craig earlier, and it's just now the unsettled situation earlier has put him in a position where he is struggling to catch up. This race is continuing with Tom, Gary and Mark. Gary runs a little wide. Guys, we'll be going on to lap 19. So positions sticking as they are with these three. Still going well. Joe McCall is picking up the pieces and salvaging the damage after his earlier spin. And the two Hyundais are now putting the pressure on Connor. Stephen Heath has dropped further down. So Stephen was pretty much qualified thereabouts as he normally does, and he's just really struggled to keep up the pace and has dropped down significantly towards the middle part of this race, and even further down now to 11th. So Stephen Heath, who was leading the title earlier mid-season earlier on, unfortunately he did miss Le Mans, but maybe next year for Stephen to continue with the speed he has could put a title fight up against Craig, Darren and Josh. Kind of goes wide. The two Hyundais are together with the Subaru. Really close here. It's fantastic to watch. Harry and Joe still fairly close together. Three there, still fighting. Here comes Josh, who is still in third, and again is still dropping off on the back of. Here's Darren. So Josh has dropped off the back of him, and Darren is just losing sight of Craig now. Craig comfortably leading. So Josh just needs to settle down, take a good podium third. On board with Tom. And this battle here has been going on since pretty much the start of the race. And Tom has got past Gary a couple of times, but it's just not worked out for him to stay ahead. So Harry is continuing to put the pressure on Joe and has called up a bit now. This race between the two Hyundais. Oh, and that is Stephen Heath off in the gravel. That's a real shame for Stephen, and it basically summarises his race here. It's just not gone to plan for Stephen. There's Kieran just ahead of Chris, and the two Nissans of Elliott Racing now together, and Rob no doubt will. Whoa, that's Josh Hardy. As I was talking about the two Nissans, we just caught the back end of Josh spinning, so Josh is now under threat from Mark. Here comes Mark. Well, as we said before, Josh 1 minute could be on the pace, no problem, and then all of a sudden he just loses his head and he spins, and that's exactly what's happened here. It's still safe for his independence points haul, but he is under threat from Mark, potentially Gary and Tom. And Tom's got ahead of Gary now, so it's a four-way battle for that last podium position. So, watching Josh here. He's looking fairly comfortable coming around this corner. But it looks like he's going to run wide. Yeah, just gets into the gravel and then just never recovers from it, spins him round. On board with Josh. This runs really wide. And Mark gets the position. So Mark is up to third now. Josh is down to fourth. Now Tom is on the back of Josh, and Josh tries to take a little dive on the Back end of Tom nearly gets sideways. So Josh and Mark still again fighting here. Oh, Mark all up, nearly up on two wheels there. On board with Josh, and Josh looks like he's got back ahead of Mark. That's a good move, a slight push wide. So Josh gets it. So Mark is really attacking here. I think he really wants that podium position. On board with Tom. So Mark goes on the outside of Josh. Oh, Josh pushes Mark off the circuit, and that's Mark going off. Tom goes into Mark. Mark comes back on the circuit, and there's a little bit of a push there. Gary's there, Tom's there, and Tom's off on the dirt. And that's what happens, unfortunately, when the cars come together. So Tom's knocked down, but doesn't lose too many positions. Back on with Mark. Josh stays in third, but oh, Mark is off on the gravel now. So Mark is off. Tom's going to come down, potentially get past Mark. But as all of that unfolded, Craig Kellett continued to the point where he was going to overtake the back markers here, but it doesn't matter. Craig Kellett takes race one ahead of Darren in second. Josh is going to take third, continue, but they may look at the incident with Mark. Josh takes third, gets a good points haul. Gary takes fourth, a very strong fourth for Gary. Mark takes fifth, Tom takes sixth. Harry Cook takes seventh. Joe McCall will take eighth. So Joe Burrows comes across in ninth. Connor takes 10th. Alan Stratton 11th. Mike Kuipers 12th. Kieran coming along to take 13th, just ahead of Heafy in 14th, and Rob finishes at the back. Let's watch this incident again from the outside, watching Mark here. So Mark goes on the outside, and then there's the push a little bit. Just there. And that unsettles Mark, so Mark just goes into Tom as Tom just tries to get past. And then Gary's involved as well. Tom ends up in the gravel. Let's watch it from Gary's point of view. Obviously Tom's ahead, and that's where Mark goes off. Tom comes back on, and Tom and Mark get together, and again, and then Gary's there, knocks Tom off. Yeah, it's just inevitable really, racing incident between those three there. Craig Kellett gets the first win of the final then, just ahead of Darren. Josh was third, Gary fourth, Mark was fifth, Tom was sixth, Harry seventh, Joe McCall eighth, Joe Burrows ninth, Connor 10th, Alan 11th, Mike 12th, Kieran 13th with Stephen in 14th, Robin 15th, and Chris Hensby finishes up the rest at the back. What this means then for the title going into race 2 of the final, Craig has the advantage now by 8 points ahead of Darren, so has pulled away slightly. Josh still in third with 178, but Mark Nicol is up to 4th now as Joe Burrows falls down to 5th, but only by 3 points there. Mike is 6th with 145, and Harry Cook moves up to 7th with 141. The rest follow on pretty much very closely from there onwards. In the teams, then it's still Elliott with 427, but look at that, DC are second with only 1 point between them, so it's still very, very close in the teams. K&N not too far behind with 403, HB much further back 351, and K-Tech miles behind 296 points. In the independents, Josh is leading by a fair distance now, 263 points ahead of Connor, 247. Gary is on 194 with Luke still on 141, still in fourth, even though he hasn't scored any points. But Joe has moved up dramatically to 128, still in fifth, so he will no doubt pass Luke when he gets more points after the second and third race. Sixth is Callum still, with Tom seventh. Alan jumps up to eighth ahead of Aaron, just by 2 points there.